Welcome to the Church Online Campus. We are so glad you're joining us. If at any time during the message tonight you have a question or you'd like to connect with us, go ahead and join our live chat to the right of the screen. One of our online hosts will be more than happy to connect with you. For all other questions regarding our church, you can visit welcometothechurch.com. Now, here's Pastor Kevin with tonight's message. Enjoy.
Well, today we're going to do something a little bit different. As you can see, a lot of times whenever I normally speak, I normally have this cool little iPad, in my hand. Today, we're not going to do an iPad. Today, I don't have any notes. There's no notes today. Now, I've prayed, I've prepped, I've read the Word. It's not like I'm just coming up here and just winging it today. It's not that, but today what I'm talking about is so near and dear to my heart. There's no need for notes. I don't need any notes today. There's not going to be any slides. There's not going to be, just wait for it, here comes funny story one. There's none of what a lot of times what we typically do to present the gospel in an effective way. We're just not going to go there today. Today, I just want to talk to you as your pastor and as your friend about something that is unbelievably important to me. And I think that it's going to be, and I think it already is, important to you. And so today, we all have things in our heart that are so near to us that's almost there's phrases, there's foundational phrases of our life, whether it's how you feel about your spouse or how you feel about your children, or maybe there's some principles that you built your life on. There's certain things in my life that I've gotten out of the scriptures and out of my personal relationship with Jesus that are so strong with me. They're little phrases, and they typically move in threes with me, but that I think about them once a week in one way or another. And one of the things to me that continually, from the very first time that as I was studying this part of God's Word, that it kind of like jumped out at me from that very time to now, this is something that I think about constantly, and I've actually kind of changed even the way I think, the way I act, how I live my life has been morphed to this particular passage of Scripture. And the passage of Scripture is found in 1 Samuel chapter 16, and it's the whole chapter. And so that's why we're not going to put it up on the screens and read the whole thing, but I want to encourage you to go back and read it because I think it's life-changing. There's a guy in this chapter by the name of Samuel. And in 1 Samuel chapter 16, what's going on is there's a guy named Samuel who's a prophet and a man of God. And God is doing great things in Samuel's life up until that point. But really, he was just getting started with Samuel at this point in his life as well. And Samuel was good friends with a king named King Saul. Now, King Saul, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy or not. This guy was kind of wackadoodle-doo. He was bipolar at its essence. He's good one day and he's crazy the next. He loves Jesus one day and the next day he doesn't. He's just Jerry Springer-esque kind of a guy. And he was king. And God had finally said, I'm done with you, bud. I'm just done. You keep saying you love me, but you don't. And you're no longer going to be king. And he tells Samuel this. Now, Samuel's good friends with King Saul. And so he's brokenhearted about the situation of King Saul's heart. But he knows that God is going to move and get a new king now for his people. And so God sees Samuel, and Samuel, even though he's a prophet and a believer, he's like us. He has emotions, and he starts to pout, and he starts to be bummed out, and I'm kind of upset with God that he didn't give King Saul a second chance, but yet I understand what he's saying. And he kind of goes through this season of a funk where he's not doing anything. He's thinking about himself probably. He's thinking about King Saul. He's bummed out. And God says an interesting thing to Samuel in 1 Samuel chapter 16. God says to Samuel, he says, how long will you mourn for King Saul? Haven't I told you I'm going to find a new king? Now get up. Get up. Quit mourning. Quit being in a funk. Get up. And I want you to go to the house of Jesse, for out of one of his boys will be my next king. And all of a sudden, when Samuel heard what God had told him to do, Ooh, man, Samuel got scared. You want me to go to Jesse's house and find a new king while King Saul's still on the throne? Because if I do that, King Saul's going to be upset with me. He's kind of crazy. Even though we're buddies, he'll probably kill me if he sees me going out trying to find a new king while he's still on the throne. You sure you want me to do this? But Sam knows what God had told him to do. And when he heard God say what to do, he got scared. But in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse number 4, I believe, says a life-changing phrase for me. But Samuel obeyed the Lord. He grabbed the cow that he was going to sacrifice, and he went to the house of Jesse. And in this we see, and I saw years ago, that Samuel heard God say to do something, but whenever he heard it, he got scared. But Samuel conquered his fear. He conquered his fear. He knew what God had said to do, but he did not let his fear stop him. He got over the thing that he was fearful of. And then the story goes on. And as it goes on, Sam grabs the cow and he goes to Jesse's house. And as he gets to Jesse's house, he knows that one of Jesse's boys are going to be the next king. And so he goes to Jesse. And as he shows up to Jesse's house, everybody's scared because this is like the president showing up. Samuel was like the man. And when the prophet shows up, normally it's not that good. And so everybody was kind of like scared. Somebody's been sinning. Somebody's been doing something wrong. And the prophet's coming to, throw down thunder and lightning from God. So everybody kind of gets their guard up. Samuel's here. And when he goes to Jesse's house, he says, hey, take it easy, man. This is good. I've come to sacrifice with you. And we're going to come to God and we're going to pray together and we're going to sacrifice together. But I'm not going to do anything until you get me all your boys. Give me all your boys because I want to meet them. So Jesse goes in, he gets all of his boys, and they come and they meet and they sit down and they sacrifice and they sit down and they're getting ready to eat together. And as they're getting ready to prepare things, Samuel knows that one of these boys is the king because God said one of these boys is the king. And so he goes to the very first one. His name was Eliab. And he goes to Eliab. And Eliab, man, he was tall and he was dark and he was handsome. He looked like a king. He was very, very kingly looking. And Samuel says to himself, surely this is him. And God says, nope, it's not him. He's not the king. Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. He's not the one. And so he tried with Eliab and he failed. So then he goes to Shammah. Nope, you're the one. Nope, you're not the one. He goes to the next one. Nope, you're not the one. And he tried with Eliab and failed, and he tried with Shammah and failed, and he tried with the next one and failed. He tried with the fourth one and the fifth one and the sixth one and the seventh one. He tried 7 times to be one of these boys to be the king, but none of them were the king. And he went there to find the king. And he failed 7 times. Nope. Failure. Tried and failed. And at the end of all of his failures, reading this years ago, it just like the light bulb just went off in my head. At the end of all of Samuel's failures, he didn't make a statement. He didn't say, well, I guess I didn't hear from God. Well, I guess I'm a moron. Well, I might as well just go back to my house and Jesse, thanks for your time. He didn't make a statement. When he failed and he tried and failed and he tried and failed and he tried and failed, what Samuel did was something life-changing for him and for someone coming soon. Is he didn't make a statement when he failed. He asked a question. And he looked at Jesse and he said, where's your other boy? As if to say, God told me one of your boys is going to be the king. He ain't him. I know that's bad English. He ain't him, and he ain't him, and he ain't him, and he ain't him. Now one of your boys is the king. None of these are the king. Where's your other son? And Jesse's like, oh yeah, there's one boy I totally forgot about. He said, well, go get him because we're not going to eat. We're not going to sacrifice and eat until this boy shows up. And what I saw in this is that that Samuel, he conquered his fear. But then the second thing he did is he didn't let his failure stop him. He tried and failed and tried and failed. And every time he tried and failed, he just tried again. This guy was a beast. He's like, no, I'm not a failure. I heard from God. This is going to work. Let's roll. Where's your other boy? And the story goes on. This is, again, for you, you might be like, hey, this is a boring story. For me, this is like, the story goes on. And as the story goes on, here comes this little boy named David. Now, David was a shepherd boy. Now, a shepherd boy, I'm trying to think of the equivalent of a job today. It'd be like and there's nothing wrong with this job at all, but it'd be like a fry cook at McDonald's. It's a teenager who's a fry cook at McDonald's. They're a dime a dozen. There's nothing wrong with that position, but it's not like, hey, what are you? I'm a fry cook at McDonald's. This is my career job. No, he was a shepherd boy. The shepherds were a dime a dozen. They sat there and watched the sheep. It was a very, very lowly position. And we don't know why, but Jesse, when he heard, go get me all your boys, he didn't even think about David. Could you imagine being David? LeBron James shows up at the house and says, hey man, get me all your kids. And you don't even get the phone call? I mean, that would be horrible. That was David. He was an outsider in his own family. He was an afterthought by his own dad. Nobody thought anything of David. In fact, you can tell later on in chapter 17 and 18, many people of his brothers, they didn't like David. They thought he was a little peon and he was just kind of a brown-noser, and the older brothers didn't like him. So the older brothers don't like him. His own father forgot about him. He's an outsider looking in his own family. Nobody sees anything in David. That's worth a darn. Then Samuel shows up. He says, go get me that boy. And as Samuel sees that little teenage boy coming with red hair, baby face, freckles, everybody else, Eliab says, oh, here comes David again. Smells like sheep poop. Yeah, there's David. Totally forgot about him. Nobody sees anything about this boy that's worth giving anything towards, except for Samuel. And when he sees that little shepherd boy coming, he doesn't smell the sheep on him. He doesn't see the pretty face. He doesn't see the peon little job. He doesn't see a nobody. And he doesn't even see a shepherd boy. When Samuel sees that little teenage boy coming up the road, he bows down and says, Your Majesty, I see you as the king. And he takes the oil and he opens it up and he pours it on this little tiny nobody shepherd boy. But as the oil hit him and it began to go down his entire body, he was instantaneously changed from a shepherd boy to now he's crowned a king. Why? Because Samuel conquered his fear. If Samuel never shows up at Jesse's house, David lives and dies a shepherd boy. Samuel didn't let his failure stop him. If at the end of his failure, Samuel would have simply said, well, I guess I'm an idiot. I guess I missed the boat. It's too hard. Can't do it. David lives and dies a shepherd boy. And then Samuel did something that is absolutely revolutionary in all of human history. Samuel had this innate ability to not see people for who they were. He could see them for who they were going to be. He didn't see David as a nobody, smelly shepherd boy. That's who David was. Sam saw him for who he was going to be. King David. The one that out of his loins would come the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Jesus Christ, the Messiah himself. That's what Samuel saw, was not this little nobody who's going nowhere, lives nowhere, he has no hope, he has no life. That's what the whole world saw when they saw this little shepherd boy. But Sam didn't see Dave for who he was. He saw him for who he was going to be. And because of that, David's life was forever changed. If there was no Sam, there is no King David. If Samuel hadn't conquered his fear, not let his failure stop him, and not seen people for who they were, but for who they're going to be, not only does David not become who he's supposed to be, but all the things in human history that have transpired since that time, that have changed the planet and changed human history, would have never happened. Samuel did three things that, as I was reading that passage years and years ago, not only jumped off the pages into my eyes, they jumped off the pages into my heart. And I began to realize that I have the ability to be Samuel. I am Sam. I am. Now, the thing of it is this, is not just me. It's not just me that I have the potential to do something in, even if it's one person's life, to change them for the better. It's not just me, it's all of us. You have the ability inside of you to be someone's Samuel. But if I started to realize years ago for me, is if I'm going to do this, I've got to live like Samuel lived. And that's where it gets hard. Because we all want to crown a little shepherd boy and make him a king. We all want to make a difference in somebody's life. But then there started to be times in my life where I know his voice. And I'm not one of those guys that every morning I wake up and I hear the Lord say something. You know, everyone hear, well, the Lord told me to eat cornflakes this morning instead of. No, I'm not that guy. I don't hear God's voice every day audibly. I don't see a demon under every rock. That's just not me. But I know my Father's voice. And there's been times in my life, years ago and even today, every day, where he tells me something to do. And every time he does, I get scared to death, just like Samuel. I remember one time years ago, my pastor and we went down to Oklahoma, and we visited a youth ministry. Our youth ministry was 15 kids at the time. And our church was about 150. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. He paid out of his own pocket, I think, for us to go down, driving his old beat-up van to drive the 13-hour trip to Tulsa. I, honest to God, didn't know what I was going to. He just said, you want to go? I'll pay. I said, okay, sure, let's go. So we go down to this thing, and it was a youth conference on how to reach teenagers effectively for Jesus. And I thought, well, I got 15 kids in my youth group. I'm not doing too good. I think I need some help. So we went to this conference. And when we went there, man, we were blown away at this big old monstrous church called Church on the Move. And man, we walked into this thing, and I was used to we had a youth room with blue carpet and burnt orange chairs, right? And I was the youth leader, and Veronica was the youth leader, and we had another helper, and I was leading a cappella worship, and it was horrible. It was bad. And we go down there to Tulsa, and man, we see this big old, it was a youth center. It was like 45,000 square feet for just kids. And I'm like, what, are we at a mall? No, this is the youth ministry. Oh, cool. We walk in, and man, the lobby looks amazing. There's lights, and there's a cafe, and then a little small one, and then we walk in, and there's a restaurant. that serves food for teenagers at this really cheap price, and there's booths and lights and a restaurant and workers running the restaurant, all volunteer ran. I'm like, what's going on here? I'll take a piece of pizza, sure, and sit down and eat, and we're talking, we're watching all these kids. Then we go and we turn in another room, and there's a basketball court inside of a caged basketball. I never heard of such a thing, this mini basketball court, and kids are playing ball. And then we go into another room, and there's just back in the day, there's all these video games. I mean, everywhere. There had to be 100 and some video games. The kind that you sit in and you drive it. You don't even got to put a quarter in it. It was all free. It was all free. It's like, where am I? This is teenage paradise. Then the youth service starts. Buses start pulling up. 1 bus, 2 buses, 10 buses, 20 buses, more than that. And this is no exaggeration. Kids getting out with Bibles in their hands. Kids getting out with everything from a Bible in their hand to shoving a beer bottle down on their pull-down pants. I mean, they're everything from I think you got some weed on you tonight to all of a sudden someone who's got a Bible in their hands and worshiping Jesus. Every amount of teenager and every type of teenager you could ever imagine getting out of those buses. And man, the service starts. It was this full band, light show, full band. The guy preaches a message. They have a drama team comes out and does a drama. Blaine, the youth pastor, gives an invitation at the end. And man, this is no exaggeration. I'm talking like 50, 60 kids raise their hand, come forward, give their heart to Jesus. They do a worship time after the message. 1,500 teenagers, 1,500, hands up in the air, worshiping Jesus. I'm bawling, saying, what in God's name am I seeing here? I'm used to blue carpet, burnt orange chairs, me singing a cappella. What is this? And my pastor and I, we go to the conference part to learn how they did this. And we live in a town of 4,000 people. That's what I lived in. Church of 150. Youth group of 15, we've got 2 nickels to rub together. And I remember sitting in this old beat-up van underneath a tree in a certain parking spot. And I've been there many times since in this spot. And I saw my pastor after one of the sessions, and Pastor Bill was writing and writing and writing. And I was writing and writing, and we could do this and we could do that. And all of a sudden, Pastor Parks looks at me and he says, Kevin, We've got to do this. I said, yeah, I know. And he starts to cry. He says, no, we've got to do this. And when he said it, I heard my Father's voice. You do what they're doing in Tulsa and Ligonier, Indiana, and watch what I will do. And I almost peed my pants. Scared to, you gotta be kidding me. I can't. I'm not even full-time. I'm working a full-time job. I'm full-time volunteer. I can't do this. I got a wife, 2 kids. I've never delegated before. I've never cast vision. I've never raised money. I've never done any of that. How can I do this? We got to do this. Okay, let's go. We go back that very same Sunday. We go back to the church, and Pastor Parks gets up front in front of the whole church and says, ladies and gentlemen, we have seen what God wants us to do. He has shown us the vision of where we're going in youth ministry, and we've got the guy that's going to lead us there, Pastor Kevin Moore. Come on up, Kevin. I'm like, what the? Okay. I walk up there. Pastor puts his arms around me and says, this is the guy. This is the guy that God's brought to our church, him and his family, and we're going to reach more teenagers than we've ever dreamed. We don't know what all it looks like, but we got a good idea. And Kevin, I believe in you, and Kevin, I believe in what God's going to do through this church. That Esther and I have already talked, and he pulled out his checkbook right in front of the whole church and said, we're personally going to write a check and give it to the student ministry for $1,000. And then I really peed my pants. I was like, well, I hope you asking me to give $1,000 because I got like $12, right? And I'm thinking, this guy gave $1,000, and I know what he made for a living. This guy was a full-time pastor and driving school bus. He didn't have $1,000 to give away. And he hands me that check. And we pray over it. And then he asked the people of the church to do the same. And some of them did. And all told, we had about $2,000 come in. 2 workers and $2,000 and 15 kids, and we said, let's go. So we designed a little, we took, the church gave us the old auditorium that they had. It was about a little smaller than this, actually. And there was a little kitchen on this side, and we put a hole in the wall, and we put cafe above it, and that was our cafe. And we sold, chips and sodas and sandwiches and hot pretzels out of it, all for super cheap. We had our own cafe, little kitchenette on the corner. Some old ladies gave us 2 couches. We put them in the back. We put up some fake brick, put a lava lamp, and said, this is the lobby. This is the lounge. This is the lounge area. And we got a cafe, a kitchen with a sign over it. We got 2 old ladies' couches and some fake brick, and that's our lounge. One kid named Zach Weitzel, he was an artist, and he was wonderfully gifted. And he painted this big mural of an angel standing there with a sword and its wings out. Looked kind of gothic / Christian, cool. It was really awesome. And we got a ping pong table and a Nintendo 64. Again, this is back in the day. This is in 98. Nintendo 64, a ping pong table, and we had a little swirly light. The little that you put in teenagers' rooms with the little ball, and it's got all different colors. And we put that in the corner, and that was our game room. So we had a game room, we had a cafe, and we had a lounge, and we didn't even have any sort of art program. I had Microsoft Word, and we started to put together on Microsoft Word these little, with word art across the top. We made this little logo because I was a draftsman, and we had the audacity to call our youth center Extreme. The Extreme Youth Center. With a cafe and a couple old ladies' couches and a Nintendo 64 and a used ping pong table. It was false advertising at its greatest. It should have been called mediocre at best. Come for real. It was. But that's what we had. And in February of 1999, we started our very first Extreme Youth Center service. We recruited a little team and recruited a drama team and a worship team. And all of a sudden, I stand at the door. It's one of my most favorite nights of my entire life, other than my children being born and marrying my wife. I'm standing at that door, and all of a sudden, what's up, man? How you doing? High five, how you doing? How you doing? What's up, brother? How you doing? And now the kid's just thinking I'm high-fiving everybody. What am I doing? I'm counting. I don't know how many's coming. Because I'm thinking, man, we spent $2,000, 1,000 of my own past. We sure in the world better have at least 16. We better have more than 15 kids tonight. And all of a sudden it gets 13, it gets 14, it gets 16, it gets 20. What's up, man? Hey, how you doing, girl? How you doing, brother? How you doing, girl? How you doing, brother? We're at 35. We're at 40. We're at 50, 51, 57, 58, 59, 61. What's up, man? 62. How you doing, girl? 63 teenagers showed up. Now I'm really scared. Not because it didn't work. Now I'm scared because it did. I have never spoken to 63 teenagers before, and all of them were completely unchurched. I'm talking spiked hair. This is back when you did that. It was like crazy stuff. Spiked hair, piercings. There's guys with makeup on. And there's this girl over here who looks like she could beat the crap out of me sitting in the front. Just this burly girl. The place is packed. And then all of a sudden I get this phone call from Joe Vargas, our worship leader. And he says, Kevin, we can't make it tonight. I'm like, what the world? Joe, the band was awesome. I mean, the band was sick. It was Joe Vargas and his boys. So if Joe don't show up, none of the boys show up. They had a family emergency. I'm like, all right, Joe, let's go. So, okay, cool. I'll do it without you. I got 65 kids sitting in the room. 63 kids. Don't want to exaggerate. And I stand on the corner, and I remember thinking, I'm looking at this girl. If this don't go good, she may take me out. And this kid over here's got makeup on, and this kid in the back, and I'm like, my God, this room's full. What am I going to do? We've got to do this. We got to do this. And I stood up and I walked on that stage and I said, hey, everybody, welcome to Extreme. We're so glad that you're here. Tonight, before we get into the message, we're going to worship. Let's all stand to our feet. And I thought to myself in my mind, man, I've been leading a cappella worship for 4 years with 15 kids. Now we got 63. It's going to be 5 times as good. This will be great. Wrong. And let's all stand to our feet and we'll worship. And this girl over here goes, I'll never forget it. Worship, she said it loud. Worship, I just came for the hamburgers, man. We'll eat in a little bit, girl. Let's all stand to our feet. And I did this thing called the victory chant. It's back in the day, where the leader would sing and then the crowd sings back, And so I got up there and I put on my best worship voice. I said, I'm going to sing and I want you guys to sing it back. And I said, hail Jesus, you're my king. And that's what happened. Nothing. The kids just stood there. Yeah. So, let's try it again. Hail Jesus, you're my king. And Zach Weitzel, the guy who drew the wall, he's in the back. He jumps up and goes, you're mine, king. And he sits back down. And for real, man, I said, hey, worship's over. Worship's over. Thanks for worshiping. We're going to get right to the word. And I preached a message. It was way too long. And I don't even remember what I talked about. I remember it being really long. And at the end of it, we did an invitation. There was one girl sitting very in the back. She was invited by a young friend of ours at our church named Melissa Howard. Her name was Tara Long. And Tara raised her hand and gave her heart to Jesus. In one night, we had as many saved as 4.5 years of youth ministry. The next week, we show back up again. Joe's there this time with the band. The cafe crew is there. The security team, because we had a security team out in the parking lot. We were used to all these kids coming, so we had some hosts out in the parking lot. Everybody shows back up. Joe shows up. Kids show up that week. That week we had 55 teenagers, week 2. And 5 kids gave their heart to Jesus. The following week, 50-some again. 5 more gave their heart to Jesus. On the 4th week, I remember in detail, we were about 57 teenagers, and 15 gave their heart to Jesus 3 or 4 weeks in. And it just kept going. And it just kept going. And it just kept going. And within a couple years, in a town of 4,000, in a church of 150, the church grew to about 250. The youth group grew to 240. And in 4 years, 500 teenagers gave their heart to Jesus. Now, why did that happen? Was it because the band was great? Shoot, no, they weren't there half the time. No. Was it because the room was awesome? No, it wasn't awesome. It was mediocre at best. It was the best that we could do with what we had. The reason that Tara gave her heart to Jesus and Josh Farkas played in the band and is now a senior pastor. The reason that Ruben Cervantes came to our church and gave his heart to Jesus and he's a pastor today. The reason that Eric Richardson in a divorced home came and gave his heart to Jesus and he's a missionary in the Middle East today. The reason all that happened is because my pastor heard God's voice and I heard God's voice. And we obeyed even though we were scared. I have the opportunity to be Samuel. But so do you. Today, God's told you to do something, and you know it. He's been telling you for quite a while. He's been telling you, you need to start working. You need to start serving. You need to roll your sleeves up and get involved more. And as soon as you hear it, there's 16 lists of reasons why you can't. You're Samuel. And there's a David waiting for you. But you'll never meet David until you conquer your fear. The other thing that Samuel did is he didn't let his failure stop him. When you start to do something, I've seen this in my life, when you start to do something for God, don't think that you're going to win every time. You're going to lose way more than what you win. You're going to fail. It's not if you fail, it's when you fail. You guys realize that Dr. Seuss took his book? Dr. Seuss took his book to 24 different publishers, and they all told him no. And he just went to the 25th one and said yes. Formula 409 got its name because it failed the wrong ingredient 409 times. That's why it's named Formula 409. Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest presidents of the United States, started a business. The business went bankrupt and failed. He was going to marry a girl. The young girl passed away. He ran for 6 different political offices and failed and did not get elected at any of them. But every time he failed, he just kept going. And whenever I read this story about Samuel, I've just made up in my mind, and I'll be honest with you, I'm looking for a group of people that have the same mindset. That we will do what he says to do regardless if we fail or if we succeed. But if we fail, we'll just try again. And we'll just try again. And then we'll try again. Because I've seen in my life anyway, that the little Davids that I've met all along the way, they're worth that failure. And they're worth me trying again. And the third thing that I see with Samuel is that is a very, very hard thing for me to do, especially back in the day. It's not near as hard anymore. But at this time, when I first got exposed to it, it was very tough. Is Samuel didn't see people for who they were. He saw them for who they're going to be. And we had a young man in our youth group in Ligonier throughout all of that time. I met him whenever he was probably about 12, huh, Veronica? Probably about 12, Gabe. It's a young man named Gabe. He's about 12 years old. And this kid was just kind of weird, I'll be honest with you. And he came up, first time I saw him, I had Logan. He was only 1 or 2 at the time. And Gabe, I was holding him, and Gabe came up and said, he said, "Sir, that little boy's way too young to be here in this Royal Ranger group. You need to take him back inside." And he's just a little guy. And I said, "But I'm thinking, Berta, you need to take your hands off my kid or I'm going to." I'm like, who is this kid? This is my first time at the church. I'm like, this is like one of the first people I've met. Like, who is this little guy? We ended up being youth pastors at that church. And Gabe started coming to the youth ministry as a little guy, and we only had 15 kids in the group, but Gabe was one of them, and he sat in the back row. Not even in the back row, he sat up against the wall. And the only time Gabe would talk was he would yell out in the middle of my message. He'd say, "Hey, Pastor Kevin, I was wearing a SpongeBob SquarePants is real." And all the kids would be like, "What? What are you talking about? What?" I'm like, Gabriel, we'll talk about that later. Thank you very much. And then later on in the same message, "Hey, I was wondering, what about Marvin the Martian? Can you think he could really..." And everybody's going, "No, we don't know." It was the only time anybody spoke to Gabe was when he would interrupt the service like that. And I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I didn't, as a volunteer youth guy, also working a full-time job, I did not have a lot of time for Gabe. I saw Gabe, and I looked at Gabe at that time, and I saw Neil Parks, pastor's son, bench press 400 pounds in high school, all-state football player. I need Neil because Neil's going to bring football players to the student ministry. I see Melissa Howard, junior high athlete, very popular. I need Melissa. I need Neil. I need Zach. And I'm just being honest with you. I was looking at the group thinking, who is it that can help us build the kingdom? And I was putting my time, and I was putting my talent, and I was putting my treasures on those kids. But the little guy in the back, Gabe, he can just sit there. As long as he don't interrupt me, it's fine. And as time went on, Gabe just sat there for about a year or two. And then all of a sudden, one day after a service, I'll never forget this day. I'm standing outside of our youth room, blue carpet, burnt orange chairs. I just got done leading a cappella worship, doing my message, and I'm standing outside the door. Gabe walks up and starts talking to me about something. I don't remember what he's talking about. But on this particular day, I didn't see the red shirt that he always wore. Because Gabe, come to find out, wasn't, just socially awkward. He was extremely high, but he was extremely high autistic. And I found that out about a year in. But on this day, I didn't see the red shirt that he always wore. I didn't see the wrestler jeans. I didn't see the Walmart shoes. I didn't see the messy hair or the glasses. On this day, I saw Gabe. I saw Gabriel Boz on a Wednesday night after youth for the very first time. And as I did, I'll never forget hearing his voice. he whispered in my ear as I saw him. And he said, Kevin, I love him. I died for him. And my heart just broke. And we finished our conversation and off we went with our life. But I started to give Gabe more time. And I would talk with Gabe. And I would do all these things with Gabe. And all of a sudden, we go to a convention. And Gabe, high-functioning autistic, who's still very ostracized from the group, per se, gets lost in the middle of downtown Indianapolis. I mean, plumb lost. And I'm thinking, I'm a volunteer youth pastor. I lose a high-functioning autistic kid. Not only am I getting fired as a volunteer, I might go to jail. This isn't good. So we put out the APB, man. I mean, we're looking for Gabe all over. And we see Gabe. This is a couple years later. We see Gabe. He's walking around downtown Indy, and he's just singing. And I say, hey, Gabe, what are you doing? He said, hey, Pastor Kevin, how you doing? Good to see you. And I was, come on over here, let's go. So we get in the car, we drive back down to the church, we drive back home, and when we get home, I'm thinking, okay, I got to get a game plan around. So I get this game plan around. Pastor Parks is going to talk to me. So as soon as I get back to the church, Pastor says, hey, Kevin, we need to talk. Yeah, I know, Pastor, I lost Gabe. No, I know you lost Gabe. I've already talked to his mom and dad. We got to fix this. Oh, yes, sir, I know we do. And I said, Pastor, I got the perfect plan for it. He said, well, Kevin, I got a great one. It's probably better than yours. Let me tell you mine first. I said, okay. And he says, from now on, there needs to be a grown man with Gabe everywhere you go. Where Gabe is, this person is. Where this person is, Gabe sit beside. You go on a trip, they're in his room. Everywhere Gabe goes, there's a grown adult with him. I said, Pastor, I got the perfect guy. And he said, so do I. It's you. And I said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. No, I didn't. But I wanted to. And I said, all right, you got it, Pastor. So all of a sudden, Gabe, next Wednesday night, Gabe comes up, hey, Pastor Kevin, I heard that everywhere you are, I got to be. Like, yes, you do, Gabe. We go to youth convention. Hey, Pastor Kevin, I'm going to be in your room. Yep, you're going to be in my room. You're going to sleep all the way over there, and me and the other fellows are going to sleep over here. You got your own bunk. You got your own section. And so, man, everywhere we went, Gabe was with me. We went on a trip. Gabe had to sit beside me. I couldn't sit by Neil. I couldn't sit by Melissa. Couldn't sit by my wife. Couldn't sit by my own kids. If I'm driving, Gabe's beside me. And at first, I'll just be honest, I'm like, dang, I don't care if Marvin the Martian's real. I don't care. I don't care, Gabe. But then all of a sudden, after this encounter, after a Wednesday night, slowly my eyes started to change. Gabe never changed at this, never. He was the same kid. I changed. And as I changed, I started to think to myself, oh my gosh, we're going on a trip. And the time I knew that something was different in my heart is Neil, the football player, pastor's kid, gets on the van, sits right there. And I just, without even thinking, I say out loud, Neil, you can't sit there. That's where Gabe sits. And I thought, oh my God. I want to sit by Gabe. I want to know if it's Marvin's real or not. And I started noticing my son Jordan loved Gabe. And they'd play Sonic the Hedgehog together. And we'd laugh together. And all of a sudden, conversation started to change from Sonic the Hedgehog to after a service. Pastor Kevin, I was reading in Ezekiel chapter 28, and I was just wondering if in the end time scenario, and I said, okay, hold on, Gabe. Let me read Ezekiel 28 first, and then we'll go from there. And it started to talk about Jesus, and then I started to looking back, I started to realize Gabe went from the back wall to the back row to the middle to the front, Bible open, taking notes. He memorized all of our discipleship things that we did. And we said, Gabe, anybody who memorizes all the scriptures, you can pick the team you want to be on. And Gabe came up and said, I want to be on the drama team. And I said, no, you don't. Yes, I do. You said I could be on I picked the drama team. Okay, you're a drama team. And we made him the prop setter-upper, and he set up props and tore them down. And I thought, this kid ain't going to last. But, man, he showed up early. He came in late. He memorized other kids' lines because he was high-function autistic, so he could watch a movie and memorize the whole thing. And so in the middle of practices, the kids would mess up their lines. And all of a sudden, it's this cop, role. And Gabe's sitting back there, and this kid messes up the line. And Gabe says, no, that's not how you do it. This is how you do it. Let me show you. And all of a sudden, he just gets into character. Well, I tell you right now, this is how you need to, and he just gets into character. He's like, man, This kid's amazing. All right, we'll throw him a bone and let him do one. And he starts to be on the drama team. Then he starts to write some dramas. They weren't the best, but he was writing dramas. Drawing cartoons every month. We would do our monthly schedule for youth. What's coming up? And Gabe would put a cartoon, and he'd do the cartoon, and we'd put it by the door, and kids could watch it. By now, Gabe's about 18 years old, and he's part of our volunteer team. He's got a staff shirt. We got him 2 or 3 because he wanted to wear the same shirt all the time. And so he always wore his staff shirt now. And we go on a missions trip. And Gabe, he's still Gabe. He picks his nose the whole way. I'm sitting right there beside him, and I thought, you become all things to all men, so you might win some. So I just dug in myself. I love Gabe. We go on a missions trip, and we're painting the church, and all of a sudden we're looking for Gabe. Where's Gabe? And we turn around, and Gabe's facing the wrong way, painting the wrong building. He was painting the church parsonage. But Gabe was totally different. And one day we go on a missions trip to Miami, and we're some really rough kids, some little guys. And Gabe, this one kid got in a fight, and I heard about it, so I came running over. But Gabe had already got the young man, and he had him on his knee. And he had that little boy on his knee, and I thought I better come check what's going on. I stood behind Gabe, and he didn't know I was there. And he said, "Little boy, why'd you hit that little boy for?" And that boy said, "I hit them because I hate them. They make fun of me, and I don't fit in, and he was telling me how bad I was, so I hit him in the face, and I'll do it again if he makes fun of me." And Gabe shook him and said, "Little boy, oh, little boy, I used to be just like you, but I found out that Jesus loves me. He loves you too. Now you go on, little fella, and you stop hitting people because Jesus loves you." And off he went. And I thought, man, Gabe's come a long way. A few months after that, the Lord, in a very cool way, called us to go serve at another church. And I talked to our pastor, and yeah, it was definitely a God thing. And we were so excited but brokenhearted. And we did our little goodbye. As we were doing our goodbye, at the end of the service, I'm saying goodbye to one of our friends and one of our best friends. And I feel this little tap on my shoulder, and I turn, and it's Gabe. And now he's this tall. He's right up in my face. He always got up right in your face when he talked. And he said, "Pastor Kevin, you're going to be leaving me. And, I was wondering if you could do me a favor." I said, "Gabe, I'll do anything for you." And he said, "Well, you're going to be leaving me, and I don't know if I'm going to see you again. But I'm a lot different now. When you first came, I didn't like myself very much. I was thinking about killing myself, and I know you knew that, but no one else did. But you and Veronica, you love me. And you made a place for me. I got my staff shirt. I love Jesus. I've been on missions trips. I'm on the drama team." And I was like, "Gabe, you're awesome, buddy." I went to give him a hug, and I did leave. And he said, No. You got to do something for me." I said, "Anything, Gabe. What do you need?" And he said, when you leave us and you go to Madison, will you do me a favor? Will you find another me? Will you just find another me, Pastor Kevin? And that phrase is on a plaque in my office at the house. It's been in every office I've ever served in. Because it's much more than a phrase that Gabe said as a teenager years ago. For me, it's kind of my life's mission. And I've seen Gabe for years. I see him in the football player who tries to act so tough, but his heart's breaking. I see him in the young girl who's trying to live up to some reputation that she thinks everybody has for her, but her heart's breaking. I see it in men. I see Gabe in men who are trying to find their place in society and in life. I see Gabe everywhere. I see him in the kids' ministry just a little bit ago, sitting down during worship, playing a quick little hand of Uno. I see Gabe there. I see Gabe on Wednesday nights at Echo when I come and I speak. I see him here. And sometimes I wake up in the morning, I'm like, man, find another me. This is my mission. Then other days, it's like this haunting voice, find another me. I'm like, no, I don't want to. But here's what I found. I'm going to close with this. Here's what I found. Is that years ago, in reading that passage of Scripture, God has given me, for me anyway, and I believe it's for all people who are Christians, a framework for how to live life. Conquer my fears. Don't let failure stop me. And I'm going to see people not for who they are, but for who they're going to be. And here's what I found. I think without a doubt we've had the chance to make other people's lives better. But because I served Eric and Reuben and Emily and Josh and Gabe and Mari and Tom and Ian, Gianna, Brandon. Because I've served these kids, I think my life's a lot better than what it would have been without them. So today, here's the scoop. I'm going to spend my life conquering my fears. When I fail, I'm just going to do it again. And I will never see people for who they are, but for who they're going to be. But I don't really want to do this by myself. I would like for you to join me. I'd like for you to join me. A lot of guys have talents and skill sets and abilities and desires for a lot of different things. And some pastors and some leaders are very theological. Y'all come and hear me talk. I'm not a deep theologian. I mean, shoot, half the time I get the address wrong on the scripture I'm quoting. I'm not a deep theologian. Some guys come and they teach, and man, when they teach, they just, word opens up. It's like they just get your finger right in and they just push the Bible right. I'm not really a teacher. What I am, and I'm really coming to grips with this in my life, is I'm a guy who wants to reach the next generation for Jesus. I'm a youth and kids guy. That's what I am. Now, I can preach to adults, and I can build teams with adults, and I can release men, and I can plant churches, and we're going to, yes, all that. But one of the greatest reasons that we even planted the church at Visalia, is I got it in notebooks and talking to, is I want to reach more teenagers than I've ever dreamed of reaching. And I want to do it as a senior pastor. That builds teams of people that say, we want to reach teenagers more than we've ever dreamed. I want to see little kids in that room, not just a handful of them. I want us to have to get a new building, not so much because the adult room is full, is we can't get the kids in the kids' room. This is who I am. I want to spend my life working with a group of adults that say we are going to conquer our fears. We're not going to let our failure stop us. And we're not going to see that little kid for who he is. We're going to see him for who he's going to be. We're not going to see that rebellious little teenager with his hat on sideways and his hind end showing. We're not going to see him for who he is. We're going to see him for who he's going to be. God's called us to make a difference in their life. And when he calls us, we will all be scared. We conquer our fears because that linebacker at El Diamante that's been smoking weed for 2 years, he's worth it. That little kid who's wondering, I don't know for sure if my dad loves me and I don't see my mom very much. That little kid is worth it. She is worth your time on a Sunday morning. Those kids are worth your time on a Wednesday night. They're worth it. And I'll give my life for this. And I want you all to join me. So what can I do? I don't need you to preach. Some of you are going to end up preaching, sure, but you don't have to preach. Some of you like to cook, right? Teenagers like to eat. Cook for teenagers. What if on Wednesday night we had a cafe right here for teenagers for all around to come and eat for free or to eat for almost no money at all? What if? What if we had a youth ministry that was so fun that teenagers said, man, I would rather go to youth group tonight than go to my practice? What if there was things going on that was so fun that they wanted to come here? That was so inspiring that their life actually, what if? What if? But guys, here's the deal. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it with you. Or I'm going to do it without you. But I'm going to do it. And it'd be a whole heck of a lot more fun if you were on the team. So here's what we're going to do today. This is our invitation. Our invitation is start being Samuel. Start being Samuel. See, I don't know what, listen, we'll figure that out. Is if you have any sort of an inclination at all of, you know what, I want to start doing something in children, and I want to start doing something in the lives of young people. We have not just a place, we have places for you, and we'd like for you to be on a team.
Thanks again for joining us at the Church Online. If you happen to have any questions, comments, or prayer requests, you can always email us at info@welcometothechurch.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we hope you have a great week.